You know, when they asked me to speak, I said, "Are you sure about that?" Because the only way I know how to speak is to speak the truth. And when I was brought here, I told myself I need to speak truth to those who I think at times have forgotten the truth of our country. So I hope you bear with me as much as possible. On the 21st of October 2015, I was part of the Fees Must Fall movement, standing in front of the gates of Parliament in a moment that I realized that change in this country is inevitable. But I also realized in that moment that change in this country will be determined by those individuals who are either believing in the democratic responsibilities that we have to our fellow citizens, or will be led by people who want to line their bank accounts with more money. I stood with thousands of students across race and class, gender and ethnicity, who gathered in front of the gates of Parliament under the collective belief that something was broken in our republic. We gathered in front of a building of a fully seated Parliament demanding a refund on the dream that was sold to our parents in 1994. A dream that many of you in this room sold to your family and to your partners and to your friends and to your colleagues. A dream that you sold to the world. A dream of a democratic South Africa that was characterized by non-racialism and non-sexism. A dream that regardless of your socioeconomic position in society, no one can arbitrarily discriminate against you. You were sold and you sold a dream to millions of South Africans that our Constitution would enshrine a belief that our country would be founded on the values of human dignity and the freedoms of equality and the advancement of human rights. You sold and you were sold a dream that your children would never have to experience the harms of apartheid again. That your children would be equally entitled to the rights, the privileges, the benefits protected by the supreme law of our first republic, the Constitution. Yet there we stood, young people, arms linked, hearts bound, your children demanding a refund on the dream that you sold us, a dream that you sold to the country. Now, I don't wish to belittle or minimize the efforts of the many thousands of individuals who fought for our country. I don't wish to make small the achievements of the UDF movement. Neither do I wish to placate the sacrifices and the deaths of millions upon thousands of activists in our country. But what I do want to do today is tell you that there is a revolutionary politics in this country that is being formed by my generation. There is a growing unrest in this country that we seem blind to, and I'm not sure why. What we have experienced for the last 20 years as a youthful generation makes me very disappointed about the state of our democracy now. Nothing has fundamentally changed. We still live in a country where if you are born in poverty, you will die in poverty. We are still in a country where I was told back in 1999, I was told that we are the most unequal country in the world. I now lecture at WITS, and I tell my students at WITS that we are still the most unequal country in the world. But I am told that I must be proud of the achievements. We have manufactured a lost generation in our country. We live in a country where a young person, if you're a young woman, we have normalized the idea that you can be raped any day. We have normalized the idea of Afrophobic violence in our streets. We have normalized the idea that if you're a foreigner, your biggest crime in society is being a foreigner, and therefore you should be punished for it. We live in a country where the expansion, and this is a success, the expansion of social protection, The expansion of access to housing, to education, to healthcare has been a success, yet it hasn't even come close to denting intergenerational and cyclical inequality. We haven't even come close to dealing with the perverse systems of poverty that exist in our society. We live in a country where 2/3 of black children live underneath the poverty line, yet only 2% of white children do the same. We live in a country that if you are white, or you're amongst the business elites, or you're amongst the political elites, your father works in parliament, your father owns a business, that somehow you are born free. But if you are not born into a certain family, you are born into bondage. Trapped in the system of democracy that doesn't give you freedom. I am of the firm belief that if we were to place our constitution, our political representatives and the leaders and those in economic power in front of a court of 6 million young South Africans who are not employed, not in education, not in any form of training, that court of 6 million young people will find them all guilty of creating this lost generation. There is a revolutionary change that is beckoning in this country, and a growing revolutionary change is being precipitated by the realization that even though my generation has never experienced apartheid, democratic South Africa bears an eerie resemblance with it. On August 20th, 1983, many of you gathered in the Rocklands Community Center in Mitchell's Plain in response to the atrocities perpetuated against you. My father, who's in the room today, declared on that day that this would be a turning point in the struggle for freedom. So I am hoping that today, that those who've gathered in this room have done so under the similar belief and spirit that your active citizenry for change in this country will be reflective of the moment of 1983 and the moment of 1985, and will not reflect the moment of 1991. Throughout the 1980s, the UDF had 3 general characteristics that I've learned from conversations, from listening and the dinner table, and these 3 general characteristics is that you were born out of reactive politics. You reacted to the faulty politics of the apartheid state and you demanded change. You organized in your thousands and in your hundreds, and you made the regime despise you. You made them feel anger towards you because you were demanding for human dignity. And out of that mobilization, you then entrenched the belief of community struggle. You realized that without returning to your communities, that the struggle would be non-existent. You wanted to transform mass mobilization that was the result of your reactive politics in communities in order to form active citizens, to inspire active participation in the struggle. You sought to move from protest to challenge. You sought to move from mobilization to organization. For you in the room, community struggle was meant to signify a return to people's power. The effort that many of you in this room made in the early years of the UDF led to its final characteristic. You made the country ungovernable. And it seems to me at times that we forget that aspect of the UDF. You realize that the center can't hold. You realize that the status quo was no longer adhering to the logic of a democratic country. You sought to force change and you evolved from reactive politics to community struggle, and eventually you adopted the notion of ungovernability. So the question I must ask you today is whether you're willing to do the same again, or whether you'll choose to make the same decision in 2023 that you made in 1991. To unite underneath the banner of the ANC or any ruling party in order to seek for some sort of elite compact. I think this is a strategic and categorical mistake. Your current proposed approach to active citizenry is based on the logic that you can hold political officials accountable for their actions. You assume that politicians in this country respect the views of citizens. It is based on the assumption that our public participation mechanisms create incentives for politicians and public representatives to function for the people instead of their political party. The only time, and I was having a conversation with someone outside who wanted me to help him with their Fine-Tine Community Center, and he said the only time politicians come to us is when they want our votes. Now, the first time I heard that phrase was when I was in primary school. The fact that I am still hearing that phrase 20 years later poses serious questions about our democracy. Many of you have looked in despair at the fall of the organization and of our ruling party, one that has a rich and robust relationship with many in this room and the UDF itself. The ANC has become marred in political patronage, corruption, ineptitude, and when I hear many of you speak, I can hear the deep anger and the resentment and the sadness that that gives many of you who fought for this struggle, who fought for this freedom. And I deeply feel your disappointment, but I'm very surprised at it. For many of the young people at the back, this is the ANC and the ruling party that we know. It is what it is. It's exactly what we've all grown up with. And our response to that is not to be to sit down. Our response as young people in this country was to make this country the protest capital of the world. And we seem to forget that every single day there are young people who are protesting for human dignity. Every single day there's people protesting and leaving their homes saying that there's something fundamentally wrong with this country. Yet we continue as if that's not happening. Our protests are about rejecting the status quo, and our protests are about reclaiming what it means to be a South African and reclaiming the idea of a democratic South Africa. As we speak here today, many of you wish to use the current political system and its mechanisms of public participation to change the country. I'm here to tell you that will probably not work. Outside of democratic elections, public participation in our country is incongruent with the political culture of many of our political organizations across the board. They're receptive to internal squabbles rather than fixing the water crisis in Hammanskraal. They're receptive to political squabbles rather than asking the question, and I call a spade, that our country has been having rolling blackouts since 2007 every single year. We live in a country that if you go to certain schools, you will succeed in life, but if you go to other schools, you will remain stuck in your position. That your access to a private school, or if you speak with my IEB accent, therefore you must be better, you're the good one. There's a need to change our politics in this country. And I agree with you in your concept document. You talk about the need to move away from armchair politics and move away from social media activism. But unfortunately, it seems, at least to me, that we're dangerously moving towards a politics of releasing statements or open letters that we share within WhatsApp groups of our colleagues, our comrades, our fellow stalwarts, as if a statement or speaking at an event somehow changes this country. So while your generation seems to be concerned with the efforts of pointing fingers and trying to figure out who do we lay blame to, my generation seeks to save what is left of this country that has been gutted and pillaged by the very same generation that brought it freedom. My generation no longer has the time to wait for the creation of an elite compact. It is increasingly clear that political power, whether it's through a majority government, whether it's through a coalition government, it is clear that political power in this country will not substantively change the legacy of colonialism, the legacy of apartheid, or the 30 years of ineptitude from the state. We're looking beyond trying to envision ourselves as some sort of blue-chip civil society. We are looking for alternative forms of political engagement. And in a similar way to the UDF, young people are now beginning to shift protest into challenge. We are seeking to shift mobilization into organization. So the question that I must pose to everyone in this room is, are you willing to embrace these politics and return the power to the people? Now, this question might make you feel nervous and might give you a sense of trepidation, but our country is slowly becoming ungovernable regardless of what we do. Its cracks are showing the creation of a lost generation has fast-tracked the inevitable outcome that this country will fall apart if we do nothing about it. You cannot create a generation whose only experience of a democratic South Africa is unemployment, inequality, poverty, and gender-based violence, and then expect us, when you figure out how to hold politicians accountable, to be standing by your side saying we're ready to fight alongside with you. It doesn't work that way. Now, I am my father's son. I would never call on for some sort of violent revolts. In a country where police are capable of killing 34 mine workers on a hilltop in the Northwest Province. In a country where activists such as Andres Tatani are shot for demanding for service delivery. In a country where fellow Fees Must Fall activists are shot 9 times in the back at point-blank range by the same police who want to protect us. I would never wish to have a violent revolution of any sort. We live in a country where certain political parties feel very comfortable with the idea that we can sing songs about violence against white Afrikaners underneath the guise of it's of historical and cultural significance. We live in a country where not a single female will think about whether today is the day where they will be raped every single 3 hours. A country where political assassination has become the norm of our society. Violent revolt would be a catastrophe in this country. My call to make us more ungovernable is not to call for revolution, but an ungovernability in the status quo of political consciousness. A revolution in the way that we think about what politics means in a democratic South Africa in 2023. A complete reassessment of our political system. A complete reinterrogation of our electoral system. Asking questions of what is money and politics in this country. Asking the questions of how can we have this notion of monopoly capital and state capture existing in the same breath in our national discourse, yet no one goes to jail for it. We need to ask ourselves what it will seriously take for us to make this country better. It is not enough to just go back to our communities. Our communities are already demanding change. They know what they need to do. Our need is for you to go into communities and lend your political voice, to lend your social capital, and to lend your economic capital to the work that young people are already doing in their communities. Today I'm asking you for one last time to think about that moment in 1983 and remind yourself that your story is not yet done. I'm asking everyone in this room to do it one last time for this country. Don't just create your own movement or declaration to hang on your walls. Join those who already do the work and finish the job that I think you left behind in 1991. Don't use this moment to only celebrate your legacy and to reminisce about the past, because I don't believe your story is finished yet. Young people in this country are writing the chapter of revolution in this country from the book that you began writing in Rockville Center in 1983, Rockland Center. You remind me that we are sitting on the shoulders of giants. So don't make yourself small by embracing active citizenry that accepts the status quo. South Africa belongs to all who live in it, not just those who are in power, who have forgotten the might and the power of the will of the people. It was said at your opening conference in 1983 that with this faith, we shall all be able to speed up the day when all South Africa's children will embrace each other and sing with new meaning. Nkosi Sikelel' iAfrika. Your children are not singing Nkosi Sikelel' iAfrika. In fact, we even changed our national anthem because we believed the one that was given to us was imposing the status quo. We didn't believe the current national anthem represented the desires and the beliefs of young people in the country. It reminded us that we are the lost generation. However, and I'll complete just now, our generation is finding its struggle. We know who our threat is. We know that our threat lies with the friends who sit in parliament and smile and we say we are changing the country, but do nothing about it. That is our threat. We know it's our local ward councillors who listen to the complaints and do nothing about it. That is our threat. The individuals who say the current state of our country is sustainable. That is our threat. Young people have discovered what their mission are in our country, and we refuse to betray it. And I hope for many of you in this room do not portray your own legacy as well. Join us as we demand for something new, a second republic of sorts. And join us as we start making change in this country. Amandla.
Awe.